What's up, guys? It's your boy Shaka here, coming to you with another episode for Twisted Path To Renown. Today we're going to be talking about some of the changes that have come to the game. There is some insanely wild differences from what we thought this game was to what it is now. Hopefully these changes do stick around. I think they are going to be pretty good. We don't have a lot of people that are going to be running around with one-shot kill guns anymore, and if they do, they're going to have to put in quite a bit of effort to be able to get those guns. And what else but the auction house that has come out, an insanely awesome change to the game. I think that this is going to do a lot for the economy. It's going to make money more valuable. It's going to make certain attributes and play styles more valuable as well. There's going to be some changes to the traders themselves. We're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff, a lot of changes to the actual in-raid environment, but stick around and we'll get right into it. All right, so first things first, as you can see, we've got a fair amount of differences in prices for certain things. A lot of the different heals that we got to see and know and love, the money value of certain things has definitely changed, been tweaked around here and there. I wouldn't say that it's game breaking, but there has been a bit of a change in terms of what stuff you can bring in that I think are necessities, as well as availability for certain things. I've noticed that aid boxes are not nearly as easy to find, as well as some things that you can craft nowadays need so many different pieces. So if we're talking about an actual component to a weapon, such as an optic scope, you need to actually have lenses for them, as well as brass tubes. Mufflers are going to take different pieces that you need to find in raid, a lot of pieces actually. If we're talking about crafting 4 mufflers, even 1 muffler, you need 10 baffle, as well as mechanisms. If we're looking at mechanisms for magazine bolt thread, or if we're talking about single action bolts or single action pistol frames, you need quite a bit of stuff here. This isn't a small amount of things. You need to get in there and get a lot of stuff. I think it's probably going to make raids short, quick and dirty ones. And what else to mention here? But we've got the canned food changes that they've made. You need to get spices, you need to get a can sealer, you need a dipper and a cauldron for certain things. No more is there going to be people running around with easy amounts of food buffs, just sprinting like crazy like I've showed you in other videos. Now, instead of just getting bass and a couple of vegetables and a can and some salt, you need to actually get a lot of different components to be able to use those food buffs. So now we're going to go back to a Stone Age world where potato seeds and chicken soup are going to be probably a bit more involved in the gameplay. I'm personally not going to be bringing in very many crafted foods anymore. I've got a couple of relics from before this update happened that are now basically solid gold. I'm not going to bring in any food. I'm going in and I'm doing quick and dirty raids. I'm going back to the age where all of my loot has a lot more value than it used to have. Whenever you lose this stuff, the amount of effort it's going to take to find the oregano, the sage, the dipper tool, the pot tool, some of these percentages are pretty big. But in terms of trying to find all of these different spices, you can't buy cans anymore in the market. The marketplace has shut down, so to speak. You're not going to be able to get some easy stuff to give you some crazy food buffs. They have nerfed the traders quite a bit. They did give them a couple of components that you can buy, but there's obviously ones that you're going to have to go into raid to get, as well as homie here doesn't sell nearly as much stuff as he used to. There's been a lot of changes. I would say Nathaniel Harrington is still pretty useless, but in terms of the optics of what some of these changes have made for the trader reputation, doing some of the quests, they aren't necessarily as important as they were before. They did make a couple of changes last minute overnight where they have some weapons that are available again, but there are definitely a couple of traders now that are either not necessarily useful anymore, or they don't necessarily have easy to access things. Like some of these things are actually quite expensive now. So the auction house is going to become quite important in terms of if you find random things in raid that you don't normally use. If you find a shotgun in raid that's 100%, you're gonna want to sell that on the trader, because if you don't use shotguns, maybe you pick that up and you're like, okay, well, this is worth more to somebody else, so I'm gonna sell this crafted gun that I found that has 100% rating on it. That being said, you can only post things on there that have 100% durability. So if you find a small rolling mill or something else that you know, you don't need, but you know could be sold on the market, on the auction market, that's something that could be useful to flip things to make more money, so that you can go into raid, actually going to these traders and buying the things that you need. Like going in and buying a couple of heals now is actually worth quite a bit of money. The prevalence or lack their prevalence of an aid box from before is now even more scarce. So trying to find these, as well as certain keys for certain areas like Dixon, there's a lot of changes. We're gonna get into it, but there's a lot of stuff to digest from this that we're gonna have to get into here. So let's try and piecemeal this a bit more. Now, luckily, I did have some leftover cards, which are now obsolete. You can't find those in raid. However, if you do have any cards left over, you might be able to buy some on the auction. But if you have the ability to, I would suggest getting more firearm component racks. And if you can't, you can always craft a firearm component, but it's only 8 slots versus the 16 slot one that you can get from our homie here, Miles Baxter. So I was able to craft 2 of these to be able to fill up my containers with a couple of more crafting pieces to try to make newer weapons. We were able to find a couple of things. We will go into raid and I'll show you a couple of areas where we did find some successful places. However, there are some major changes in raid. There are some places where the key spawns don't nearly come as often as they do, which is kind of nice actually, because we had a stockpile growing, and I found that the key prevalence in the game was a little bit too high. Every time you went to berry, there was always a key there, so I had all of these leftover berry keys. Every time you went to medic, there was always a key there. Every time you went to Dixon, there were always 2 keys on the AI that spawned in that area. And now we're in an era of keyless raids. Sometimes you go to berry, you're not going to find that key where you thought you might be able to find it before. I did notice that the Widow's key does spawn pretty prevalently. However, they did nerf the inside of the Widow's cabin a little bit. You can't necessarily find bombs, TNT in there anymore, as well as you can't find the coveted 75 HP salves. Those are a thing of the past. Those are things that you're going to have to only be able to craft. All right, so looking at some of my footage from in Dixon, we won't be able to find those keys on the AI anymore. And if they do spawn, they're probably going to be pretty low percentage. I haven't seen them yet. I did probably about 4 or 5 raids at Dixon and wasn't able to find any key. However, the Dixon house key probably isn't nearly going to be as spawn worthy or relevant, because generally the doors are unlocked from what I've seen. There is that sack still in the front, but there isn't going to be that box to the left there anymore. And the table on the close left side, closer to the shed, it's not going to have machinery spawning on there anymore. It's generally going to have actually pretty much nothing of use. I would still look at it, but it's probably not going to be anything good. I've noticed that the back door is usually unlocked. I don't normally check the front just because I like the cover, but there are a couple more boxes inside. You've got that belt buckle on the table. This box is going to give you a bunch of components that you're looking for to craft the mechanisms, as well as there's going to be heals on the right side by the rifle holster right here. Yeah, you want to check that. There's going to be heals there. The seed potatoes, you know, maybe become more useful now, but just make sure that you're watching your hydration. Again, there is no machinery spawning on that table very often, probably because you could just easily loot it through the window. And then there's still obviously these bags underneath in the house. We have yet to get into the Dixon shed area, so I can't really give you too much info on there, but I'm noticing that the machinery spawns in that area are actually pretty bad. But the table to the right side, or to my left in this on the right side on my screen here, that table is still going to spawn some brass sheets, a couple of components on the table, and obviously there's still going to be some baggage stuff like a belt, as well as a variability of a medium tier backpacks that spawn in the actual house themselves on Dixon. Now going into the Widow's cabin, even though the keys are very prevalent, there's going to be a few less things to be found in here. Like I'd said before, the dynamite on the table. There are a lot of gun components that you can find in here. I wouldn't necessarily say that they are uncommon pieces though. Most of the time these containers didn't really have too many crazy things in them. but it's always good to stack up on just some of the medium range, medium tier stuff. This box though, right by the table, that's going to be the one that gives you the higher tier components that you need to craft some of these mechanisms. So definitely check this box out. There are going to be some different boxes that I'm going to point to as we get through it that are going to be the more rare pieces that you want to concentrate on if you are going into a raid and trying to get some of the more bang for your buck. And like I said before, these echinacea salves, they're going to be the mid-range ones, the 36 HPs. You're not going to be getting probably the $9 stacks of money on the table anymore in the Widow's Cabin, but you are going to find those cans, which actually are going to be quite useful. Sometimes they're going to be in those burlap bags, or sometimes they're going to be in the boxes. So definitely make sure you check out the cans whenever you do find them. However, I have yet to find a can sealer for food, but at the same time, food is probably going to be a lot more scarce, especially the crazy buff food that we had talked about in previous videos. So maybe picking up cans is not necessarily a priority at this point. So now after going into Widow's Cabin, I decided to go over to the left side here, or the west side where the tents are. You can definitely still find some random things. There seems to be a bit more bag variability. You can definitely grab little things as you go. There's more food in certain things. There's going to be more cans in certain areas, as well as more food on the tables. So definitely check that out, especially if you aren't going to be bringing any food in because of the sheer value of the crafted foods nowadays. But there does seem to be like a fair amount of things that spawn. As well as I was leaving, I thought, okay, maybe I can actually take this axe and bring it to the auction house and turn it as a profit. It's one of those things that you don't need a holster for. You can carry it out, so to speak. And as long as it has 100% durability, you can put that right into the auction house, and boom, I made $5 extra right there on my raid. Now see, the changes that have become part of the norm in this game, the update, it definitely makes me think my playstyle is going to involve a lot of quick and dirty solo, get in, get out, grab a bunch of stuff, and then leave as soon as you get your bag full, because now there's so many more things to grab in a raid that your bag fills up super quickly and your weight becomes, insurmountable because of the food changes. I don't want to use this really expensive, valuable food to help me carry my stuff out. So why not bring in a small bag, grab as much as I can, fill it up, and then quickly take an extract out and reset and recycle and do that over and over again. That seems to be kind of the things that I'm leaning more towards in this game. It might not necessarily play out to be more PvP oriented, but it definitely gives me the ability to grab as many things as I can really quickly and get out before I lose all of that stuff to, somebody that headshots me or an AI that might, take me down in one way or another. So like I said, we've got the axe in our hand. Looks kind of funny. We look like we're in the middle of a street fight. But if you go, you can check to see what other people are placing the value of certain things at. And if nobody's actually put it on the auction house, heck, maybe you can set the value of it, because there's scarcity now. So, I thought to myself, I'm going to go to my listings. I'm going to create sell listing, drag it over, and then I'm going to put it up there for $5. You can actually drag the slider amount there. You can see it on the left side. If you have more than one axe, you can put more than one in there and it'll automatically deduct it from your listing or from your stash. And then you just place it on there. And as soon as it gets sold, it'll show the balance on the right side. And instead of saying 0 out of 1, it'll say 1 of 1 in green text. And then you click take, it'll automatically put the money into your account. I think that's pretty sweet. Now, in terms of the grave site, we're not going to get that key spawn every time anymore, but there are a couple of things that you can grab from there. There will be money sometimes. There will be money items or barter items that you can grab from there. And then if you do get lucky and you do find the key for the carriage house, you can always make your way over there. There are going to be a couple of actual pieces, boxes that have some components in them. You can always check out. Now, another cool addition to the game, that they've added some ducks to the game, some mallards. So you can do a little bit more hunting, especially if you like your bow and arrows. The mallard feathers, as well as the food itself, the liver and the mallard meat, I believe is what it would be called, will be given to you. The mallard feathers are going to probably give you a bit of a better buff with your arrows. So definitely check those out. We'll probably do a video on that at some point. But in terms of finding these ducks, there's a bit of an issue with that. They're not waterborne. Oh, this They're underwater. Okay. Well, that explains it. You can hear the ducks, but you might not actually see them. And you can shoot them out of the sky. If you do hit them, they will fall, but sometimes they'll fall into the reeds or into a further place that you might not track them down because they are quite small animals. However, if you do bring a bow and arrow, you can kill the ducks fairly easily. They do float in the water. They won't get triggered by gunshots and they won't fly away. So if you're trying to do some mallard hunting, I would say bow and arrow is probably the play to do that. But if you want to bring some homies with you, scare them up into the sky and birdshot them out of the sky, that's also an option too. You just might not find every single one of their bodies if you're looking to hunt them all. Also guys, if you haven't already and you like the content, definitely hit that like, subscribe, and comment in the section below what you guys thought you liked about the update, as well as there is a 10% off promo code right now. So if you have a friend that's looking to buy this game, it is very cheap right now. It's only about 20 bucks for the base level. But there is an additional 10% discount if you use the Shaka 10 code just on the bottom right corner of your screen there. So definitely check that out. Spread the word. If you do have somebody that's looking to buy the game, definitely get them to put in the Shaka 10 promo code for 10% off of the original price or the sale price that it is right now. Okay, so after that little bit of a duck distraction, we finally made our way to the carriage house here. And we've got ourselves, I don't think we have got ourselves a key, but we do have those crates there that are going to have those components. And as I've said before, they're probably a bit more common components. They're not going to be able to just fully flesh out a specific build or a craft that you're going to be making. And sometimes you're not going to be able to find that key, or sometimes it's already been unlocked and looted. But if you do find the key and it's already been unlocked and looted, hold on to that key, or maybe even sell it on the auction house if you feel lucky and you want to get some money from it. But I would say it's probably still worth to be held onto and to maybe be brought into raid, but it's not going to be nearly as common to find good things in the actual carriage box, as well as the actual key itself. It's not going to be super easy to get a hold of either. Yeah, I hear you. Oh God, not another bow. How am I not running right now? Yeah, that's right, bitch. Nice try. What we've learned about the update so far is that the ability to make the endgame weaponry is going to be a lot harder to do, which is actually going to help out the gameplay quite a bit. I think that there was a huge prevalence of the 39-9 rifle and the one-shot ability that it had on the newer players. I personally am going to enjoy the fact that I can't just easily and quickly shoot everybody on the map that I come across, as well as it's going to create a level playing field. As you can see here, actually on the farm, there is no table there anymore where the sewing machine spawned. The machinery is also going to be a lot more scarce. And you can see right here, we finally found our first bit of spices, coriander seed on the top shelf in the farm room. So I've noticed that the farm key doesn't necessarily spawn as often, but I have had reports of people going to the farm and shooting the AI and still finding 1 or 2 farm keys on the bodies. So that is a bit of a coup. Sometimes there's going to be an overabundance of keys, and sometimes there's going to be no keys at all on the bodies. So definitely keep an eye out for every one that you drop in and around the farm. But as you can see, there's a little bit of a nerf in terms of what actually spawns in the locked room areas. Maybe it's a mixed bag, but for the most part, it does seem like an all-around nerf on certain things, certain availability for stronger weaponry. I think what it'll probably do is get people a little bit more involved in the lesser meta weaponry. I think maybe the slug shotguns are going to become more meta. Maybe throw a scope on one of those and use that to head tap people. But in terms of the playing field, once the initial grandfathered in meta weaponry that people have stockpiled dissipates and the durability of all that stuff is gone, I think that the level of the newer players and the players that have been playing for a long time is probably going to be a bit more even keel. I would say that for now, I'm still definitely dying to people with pistols, and I'm less confident in bringing in the stronger weaponry, which I think is important, because if you do lose that weaponry, you're losing a very valuable piece. And it's nice to not just be running around shooting all of the Timmies with a very strong weapon, or running across a 5-man or a 4-man team that are all going to be running the really strong weaponry as well, because that means that there's going to be more of a penalty for those people that die. Hopefully it doesn't involve people just sitting in bushes and waiting and capitalizing. But, you know, it's all viable play styles. It is what it is. This might be what the game turns into. It might become that Tennessee Hills, the new map that's coming out at some point, is the dominant PvP area, and this map is more the, you know, gung-ho, dirty, kick up sand in somebody's eyes, rock'em sock'em fighter type one. Or maybe it's just going to be more PvP oriented, and people are going to be less confident in taking on PvP fights, which I think is important for newer players. I think that it's going to create an atmosphere where people are going to probably do more things, trying to get more loot rather than just having all the loot already and wanting to just take on people in whatever fight capacity that they can. As you can see on the farm, we've still got quite a bit of food capacity here. There's salt, there's a lot of the vegetables. However, there are some changes that are going to be made with the farming of vegetables in the workshop. You're going to need to find a rake, which I haven't found yet. It's not something that you can actually craft like an axe or a pickaxe. A rake is actually something, so far during the making of this video, that is something that's going to be something I haven't found yet. Maybe there'll be a spawn that will come up at some point and we can make it in a future video. But for now, farming and creating vegetables overnight in your workshop is not necessarily as easy as it used to be. And on top of that, whenever you try to farm 10 vegetables, you're using up 100% of that durability on that rake. So rake value is going to go up quite a bit. If you do find a rake, weigh the options of selling it in the auction house or using it to farm and make vegetables, which aren't necessarily as potent of a moneymaker as it used to be, because you do need all of these other components like the can sealer and all these other things. Another thing I've noticed as well is around the farm area, there are some roving bands of farm walkers that aren't necessarily part of the farm, but are just patrolling around that area. So make sure you know about this, because there's now more AI in the farm area, I believe. That could have been a respawn of AI to the farm, but I'm pretty sure that those are just random patrols around the farm area. So the AI in that area have become a little bit stronger. It's not necessarily as easy as just going in there, killing 3 or 4 farmers, and then getting whatever loot you wanted at the farm itself. One of the things that's remained fairly unchanged are the TP settlements, both of them. I would say that it's just as easy to get in there without aggroing the AI as before. The only difference I've found inside the actual tents when you're looting is going to be that there's less food or fish inside of the bags. As you can see, we've got a fair amount of heals here, which is actually probably going to be pretty important. I would say that the lack of food has been replaced with an abundance of 36 heals, which is going to be a lot easier to get to than, say, maybe a widow's, which you need a key for, as well as maybe some bow and arrow stuff for the duck hunting that you might be doing, which is pretty much in the same area. Between the two TPs is pretty much where the most consistent duck spawn is, right by where the carriage lockbox is. So definitely keep an eye out for the ducks if you are looking. However, they might be a little bit submerged, or actually a little bit raised out of the water. It seems like the pathing for these ducks to sit above or below the water is a little bit scuffed. So just keep an eye out for that whenever you are trying to hunt the ducks. Now the changes when it comes to the smaller compounds in certain areas where the bags are, or where boxes that they've added in previous updates, those are going to be more important to check nowadays. So definitely go there. It looks like we've got ourselves a bag spawn over at this abandoned place just west of the TPs, as well as you might find yourself a little bit of food, a little bit of craftable stuff inside of the actual area, and some kind of mid-range looking stuff on the tables, as well as Forgotten Bivouac is going to have some lootables as you're extracting, which is just going to be a little bit more northwest of this area. As you can see, the bag is not so easy to spot if you're trying to extract, but it's just on the other side of the cart here. Definitely something worth checking out. Again, pretty mid-range stuff, but you never know. There's going to be a lot more value on things on barter or things in the auction house. So Sometimes you've got a little bit of extra room and you see yourself finding something in a bag that you want to grab. There's a little bit of easy use there. Now finishing up berry, we're going to see what is inside of these areas now. It looks like we have pretty much the same stuff. Nitroglycerin's not going to be in this room anymore from what I've seen. You might be able to find brass sheets, but for the most part I see aluminum sheets, and there are a lot of very low range heals in here now. There's going to be only the 15s and 14s, but there's definitely going to be a lot of them in the med room, so definitely check that out. Making our way over to the actual main house. On the outside there, you're going to find different components. I would say they're probably still mid-tier, maybe mid to high. And then in these areas, you're going to find some coveted cigars, the basic, advanced, and superior vault extension permits might actually be really good to use on the auction house if you have already expanded your vault. But if you don't, that's a good place to look for it. As well as there are going to be machinery pieces spawning out here. And obviously the brass sheets, a couple of mid to high range components for bullet making. Right here, the box next to the barrels on the right side there. That one's going to have some pretty good loot in there. That one's going to give you the mechanism pieces that you need to craft certain components or weapons. So definitely check out that box. I'll be looking at that one again in later parts in this video, but just to point that out now. And as well, we're still going to have the bag on the bench there. This room is going to give you a couple of food items, maybe some cans. Nothing too crazy different about this side of berry, as well as you're still going to be able to find a decent backpack in this corner. You won't be able to find the oil on the shelf anymore. From what I could see there, that's not really a good spawn anymore. No major changes to the widows. Once you go to loot them, they're going to have some components, a couple of heals, probably lower to mid-range, nothing too crazy. But you know, they're going to give you a couple of good things. Sometimes they'll give you a scope shotgun, and sometimes they'll give you a bigger bag. And obviously the widow's key is going to be a different piece altogether. There you go. And they're actually now going to be at 100% durability. So maybe they've fixed the key durability issue, because I've noticed that sometimes it gets down to 20%. You can still keep using it and it doesn't seem to go away. As well as obviously there's going to be some lenses and some good money items. Mid to high tier ammo types that have been crafted or that are better than dropped on most AI. So definitely keep an eye out for that. However, the recipe to craft ammo has not changed very much. I would say that some of the components that you'll need to find, like the number 5 smokeless gunpowder, you won't be able to find that in Widow's Cabin nearly as prevalently or nearly as often. So creating some of these higher tier ammo types, it might just be something that you might want to put on the wayside. I quite liked the ability to do a lot of crafting in this game, but now we're at the point where crafting has become so nerfed that it might be just as important to, you know, rely on what you find in raid rather than going to certain compounds that you used to go to kind of farm better ammo or better components or better craftable things. The ability and the availability of some of those things means that the value of these components that you were crafting before en masse are now so much more harder to find, that the amount of effort to put in to craft those certain things, you might just want to sell it on the auction house. You might want to just become like a professional crafter, so to speak, that you can use that ability to craft certain things and then you just turn it around and sell it on the auction house, so that you don't have to worry about gear fear when you go into raid, because you spent, you know, 20 hours trying to get all these craftable materials together to make like 100 rounds for a gun, and you dropped like 25 of them because you got shot by somebody with a 38 or whatever hiding in the bushes. So it might be that you put less credence on your raids, or if you're going in and you want to go in with a 5-man crew and you want to get like the craziest of the craziest, just get your money up and buy it from that specializer that did all the effort, that put in that legwork to craft all that stuff, to put it on the market, to sell it to you, rather than going and doing all that crafting yourself. There's a lot of new nuances to the game that you might want to put into effect here. But in terms of how much they've lowered the playing field or they've leveled the playing field, I think that that's pretty important. I'm glad that it's become this much of a pain in the ass to craft certain things that are that strong. However, I think that we're probably going to get into the realm where maybe shotguns with slugs are going to become the meta, or at least become the higher tier meta, because of the fact that it's so much easier and more prevalent and more more cost effective to just get one of those rather than, you know, crafting this insane amount of machinery heavy ammo as well as components for all of these things that you need to make a 39.9 nowadays. You know, who knows? It's going to take a couple of weeks or months before all of the durability of all of the weapons that everybody's stockpiled before this update kind of dissipates and goes away, or people are just too afraid to bring that stuff out. And so the crafting and the availability of a shotgun and the slugs and the lack of resources and components that you need to make those things, that might become the new meta. Who knows? We'll see how things go. That might be where I start leaning more towards. I do have a stockpile of shotguns. You can still get a few amount of shotguns inside of the mine itself. So maybe that becomes the new meta because, you know, as we'll see in the future, the office that you unlock the door for to go into at the mine, it doesn't have that crazy ammo and crazy weaponry that you found beforehand. So we'll just have to see where that all takes us in the future and where people gravitate towards. But that's my guess is that shotguns are going to become a bit more prevalent, but we'll see. Who knows? Later in the stream, we were actually able to find a way inside of the locked box by the carriage house. There was $8 and a chest piece in there. So we're talking some pretty sizable money and a pretty good barter item. So definitely make sure you're always checking that grave site. If you do spawn in the south side there, that is a viable thing to check every time you go through. And if you haven't seen that, definitely check out the video for where we finally found the key to unlock that carriage house box. All right, so when I talked about the box on the platform there, this is an example of the higher tier stuff that you can get from this box. So definitely make sure you're looking at that one. And I was lucky enough to get a bullet press while we were inside the actual berry this time. So definitely keep that in mind. That's probably going to be the higher tier area where machinery might spawn. I don't really think the back right in that underneath the ramparts there, just the opposite corner of where I'm going into right now, is going to have a machinery spawn anymore. And sometimes the food's on the table, so make sure you're always looking underneath the table if you are looking for some food components or vegetables, I should say.
Unless they scooted back. The one left side is still closed for sure.
Yeah, I hear him.
I got an angle at him.
Heard him. Heard him again. Nice shot. I want to say that's it. I might have blown that guy up actually. All right, so while we were in between fights at Dixon, I was able to get my shed key that I had brought in. I didn't actually find the shed key. However, there was sandpaper in there, which is really nice. Some bullet cores, a couple of other heals, maybe some mid-tier mid-tier smokeless gunpowder, as well as some coca liquid extract. But generally, it's going to be not as good as it used to be to go to Dixon. I don't think there's going to be nearly as much machinery on those tables spawning, but definitely check out what are on the tables because you never know what you'll find. But generally, it's probably going to be one of those things that the amount of AI that you have to fight will reflect the amount of things that you get from that specific compound. And sometimes the effort to put in to get some of those things might actually be more costly, like the amount of bullets you require, or the cost of those bullets or guns or whatever. One of the good things about the changes that they made is that durability is not nearly as impactful on the gun. So whenever you shoot your gun or you're in a full raid and then you do another full raid, your gun isn't probably obsolete halfway through or at the end of those two raids. Like you actually do have a bit more durability on your weapons, which is actually pretty nice. Again, we weren't able to find a key for Barry, but we did have somebody bring one in for us so we could actually take a scope inside. Looks like there's some sardine cans on the shelf, a lot of food, not necessarily very good food, and boom, there is the iron mine key right there inside of the box, just inside the door on the right side. Sardine cans are going to give you some bad dehydration, but still useful. And again, just to show you where that spawn is for the key to go to the drawer at Scott's mine, as well as there's no gun on that table anymore. There's a little bit of ammo, maybe, you know, the small rolling mill is useful, but the amount of stuff that's in these cabinets to go inside of berry is definitely been nerfed quite a bit. So these compounds aren't nearly as easy to farm to get some good stuff, and they're very costly when it comes to bringing in some really good high tier stuff. However, while some things change, some things just stay the exact same way. Looks like the TNT boxes haven't been nerfed in any way. There might not have been TNT to begin with, but there's definitely always those little hand bombs, and now you can put them inside of your pockets. You can use the weapon wheel to great effect. If you've got 3 or 4 bombs, you can easily hold down whatever hotkey you've got fixed to that. Mine is X. So whenever I hit X, I can quickly use the weapon wheel to pick up whatever's in my pockets, whether that's heals or grenades. I think that's a really nice change. Another place I want to talk about is going to be Deadshot's cabin. The table on the right side of the cabin right here, that is going to actually have a weaponry, a machinery component on it as well as there might be a machinery inside. Definitely not really great shelf spawns anymore, and maybe not things in the cabinet that are of use. You'll still be able to get the money there on the corner, but it doesn't seem like it's that much anymore. And maybe the arms license is not going to be spawning there. We haven't seen it on the corner of the table. However, the quest for reputation for the traders isn't necessarily as important as it used to be. But definitely whenever you do clear Deadshots, check that table, as well as a new crate that spawns next to it with some mid to high tier components on the side. My friends actually already looted it by the time I got there, but I just thought I would give you guys kind of the inside scoop on that one. Things that I've noticed about the change at mines is that the heals at the medic table are actually not going to be that good. They're all going to be 15s and 14s as well. So the nerf for spawns of medium to high tier heals is actually quite a bit significantly lower. That's something to be taking notice of, as well as when you actually go into the locked room, the closest container on the left side here, the cabinet, is got almost nothing. Just some barter items, but there's no high tier guns, no high tier armor. You're obviously going to be able to find some more bags, some holsters, and obviously the safe has been left untouched. But in terms of going in there to farm mine, to try to find some really good guns, you're basically only going to be able to get the double barrel shotgun from the boss and the people underneath the boss, as well as maybe some half durability, if you're lucky, 44 rifles with a scope on it. However, this container here, that's going to give you the very coveted components that you likely won't find in raid very often. You might be able to find it at Berry in that container that I showed you on the platform, or inside this locked room. But other than that, some of those very coveted crafting materials that you need for some of the receivers for different rifles or different pistols, that is going to have to be found in places like this. So if you're looking to do any crafting, that's one of the only things that is going to draw you to come to mine. You can get those holsters, you can get those bags, you can get those high tier craftable components that you need, as well as you can get some pretty awesome, highly durable, if not 100% weapons from the other side over here where Scott's Mr. Douglas Dimmadam, I don't even know. But he will give you some fairly good armor as well. Pretty bright, so you will be spotted from a bit further away. But that's pretty much most of the changes that I've seen. I'm going to try and do some more compound specific videos in the future. But let me know in the comments section below what you guys think about the update, what you think should be changed, or what you think you want to see more of in the future, as well as maybe what videos you want me to pump out in the future as well. Some things I really want to see in the future, obviously more weapons and the Tennessee Hills map for a bit more of a PvP feel. However, I do really want to see VoIP in this game. I think that would really help out some of the community problems that people are having. There's not really much trust in the game. You can't really go up to somebody and say, hey, like, let me help you with this, or, you know, how you doing there, fella? Like, you know, there's no communication ability. It's basically just like, want to work together, or, you know, people just betray you or shoot you anyways. Like, there's no in between. It's hard to trust people in this game. But once VoIP becomes a thing, there's going to be a bit more humanity in the game. I think that the way things are going in terms of how they've nerfed the ability to craft some of the higher tier stuff, I think that one of the things that I really liked about this game is the fact that there is no real considerate meta. Like the meta is all over the place. You can go bow and arrow and do silent killing, or you know, you could be sneaky and just have a 38 pistol, or you can go for the auction house and become kind of this like money making mogul. I think that this game is going in the right direction. I just think that some of the changes they made where they reeled some certain things back, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve and a bit of a growing pains in terms of losing the ability to do certain things they used to be able to do. But I'm hoping that in the future the devs don't do that very often. I think that they just had to kind of like recalibrate the direction where they wanted to take this game and nerf a little bit of kind of what people and newer players were complaining about, which was probably, you know, the chads running around dominating the servers with some insanely easy weaponry to find once you kind of get the snowball rolling. But in terms of where I think things are going, I think it's a really good direction. I want to see more questing. I think questing is something that is lacking in this game that I really want to see. I really enjoy doing kind of the trader rep quests that were given to me, but there's only 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And then once you do those, you don't really get that much out of it anymore since they did nerf the traders. In terms of the quests, I want to see, you know, just random things that you can do to make more money or to do certain things that you might not be able to do otherwise. But anyways, we'll just have to see where things go from here. And until next time, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Definitely hit that like, subscribe, and comment in the section below for that sweet algorithm juice. And we'll catch you again real soon. Okay, ciao for now.